Allow me to read out a question that Bing Hua from Singapore has written. Reflecting on Luang Por Chah's 100th birthday, the thought that arose is of attachment to one's teacher. Like the manner in which Ananda was so attached to the Buddha. And he was advised by the Buddha to let go of the physical Buddha and to rely on the Dhamma and to be a lamp upon oneself. To take refuge in the Dhamma, but Luang Por mentioned that even with the Dhamma, there is a danger of attachment. Do we ever have to let go of the Dhamma, Luang Por?
Well, I guess you could say the answer to that is we let go of the Dhamma by becoming the Dhamma. Our mind becomes the Dhamma. So there's nothing more to attach to or let go of. But in the process of the practice, the Dhamma, generally speaking, it's something we aspire to, the qualities that the Dhamma comprises. So every night we chant the recollection of the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha. The qualities of the Dhamma are timeless, encouraging investigation, leading inwards to be known individually by the wise. It's really the qualities that the Dhamma has is what we're aspiring to. So they're impersonal, and they're not for attachment. By developing these very qualities, the qualities of the Eightfold Noble Path, understanding, insight into the Four Noble Truths, all these qualities that we aspire to and cultivate dispel attachment, break through attachment. So that, the path doesn't lead to suffering, it leads to the end of suffering. So to attach to the path is okay. As I said earlier, you have to attach to something. Of course, sometimes we attach too tightly. We try too hard, we hope too much, we cling so much that we get angry with ourselves, angry with others, and so on. It can happen, of course. So that's something you have to kind of keep reflecting on in your day through your practice. Am I holding on too tightly? And the clue there is, well, maybe even the Dhamma that you practice or that you aspire to can cause suffering. So the example I gave earlier was, you try to hold on to the precepts, but maybe you hold so tightly that you start looking down on others, becoming critical of others, even angry with other people who don't practice the precepts in the same way as you. So the Dhamma there, you're holding on with too much personality, too much sense of self, and you have to relax a bit. It doesn't mean to say give up the Dhamma or the Sila or the practice. It just means relax your attachment a bit at that time. Same with meditation. Some people become so obsessed with meditation, they get so angry with other people that, if anyone comes along to disturb them, they just shout at them. And you think, oh, they're practicing meditation to be more mindful and to reduce their states of confusion, reduce states of anger, and yet they seem to be getting more angry because they're becoming very attached to the peace or to the practice of meditation. Some people become competitive. So they're sitting meditation and they keep looking at the person next to them who's meditating. And I'm going to sit straighter. I'm going to sit in full lotus. They're only in half lotus. I'm going to sit longer. If they can sit 1 hour, I'm going to sit 2 hours. So people become competitive even with meditation. So of course, every aspect of the practice can become a basis for attachment. But letting go of attachment here doesn't mean giving up the practice. It means just adjusting your attitude, recognizing where you're over-attaching, clinging too tightly, and you just relax a bit. And we all have to learn that, to learn the right amount. What is the right amount, just right in the practice? This term Luang Por Chah uses, podi. It means what is just the right amount, neither too tight nor too relaxed, whether it's our efforts or the amount of strength of mind we put into the practice. You're always having to learn to adjust just the right amount. In practical ways, it's very useful, that reflection. How much to eat? What is the right amount? Too little and you become weak. Too much and become slothful and lazy, indulgent. What is the right amount of sleep? too much and you can't concentrate. Too much sleep and you become very lazy and your mind can't settle down. Too little and maybe you can't concentrate. Your mind is just, you feel spaced out, or you just keep falling asleep because you haven't had enough sleep. What is the right amount? What is the right amount with talking? If we talk too much, we got no time to be mindful and watch our mind. If we don't talk at all, maybe we're suppressing a lot of unskillful emotions, and sometimes talking and with the right people in the right way can help. So it's a good reflection. What is the right amount in Dhamma practice? And that helps you to deal with attachments that arise during the practice.
Sadhu Lampa. I'd like to now please invite Jesslyn. Jesslyn, please.
Sadhu Lampa, for all your teaching. I'm really very grateful. And also especially the sharing of Ajahn Chah, because I only read his book. So being able to listen to whatever that I read and apply, it actually gave me a lot of happiness and a lot of joy. Thank you very much, Lampa. Well, I have one question, which is in the chanting of the verses of aspiration, there is a threefold bliss. Can Lampa explain and probably elaborate what is the threefold bliss? Because in my thought and perception, I thought the bliss is only Nibbana. So when I was listening to the chant, there is a threefold bliss. Thank you, Lampa. Sadhu Lampa.
Well, if you read the suttas and the texts and the Abhidhamma, you'll see the Buddha in his great knowledge and wisdom was just being honest and saying, well, there are levels of bliss available for people in the world and in the different worlds. So there's the basic, the bliss of being born as a human, and we have the happiness is available to a human being, the pleasures of living in the world. There is pain in the world, but there's a lot of pleasure. So this is what we call the Dhamma loka. And that's something people aspire to be born as a human being, to have nice food, to make wealth, to see beautiful things, hear melodious sounds and so on. That's one kind of bliss. And then there's the bliss of the Brahma Loka. There's the heaven realms. The heaven realms and the heaven realms go from the ordinary heaven realms, the lower heaven realms, right up to the Brahma Loka, the Rupa Brahmas, based on people who have developed Rupa Jhana, and then the Arupa Jhana Brahma realms based on the 4 Arupa Jhanas. So these are blissful. And the Buddha is saying, being honest and say, you wish somebody well, or you're wishing them the bliss of whatever bliss is available in the world, the human realm, whatever bliss is available in the heaven realm and the Brahma realm. And then, of course, the bliss, as you say, of Nibbana. And it's been clear that, there are these ascending levels of happiness that we can aspire to and wish for others. You might say it's being practical is, few people just jump straight to Nibbana. They tend to attain the bliss of being a good human being and the happiness that brings, and then the bliss of states of samadhi, jhana and arupa jhana, they would attain that, and then they tend to attain Nibbana. So it's just, most people are experiencing a step-by-step ascending in their level of happiness. So it's a recognition of that.
Sadhu Lampa. Lampa, there's still a few people who are attached to shyness or confidence in just asking a question directly. So there are a lot of direct questions that have been typed to me directly. So allow me to help them to read it out. Okay. Firstly, Helen Lim has a question. Question is, I have a book to record my meritorious deeds to bring up joy each time I read about the deeds. Is this an unhealthy attachment? And so when I asked about what this book is about, so she says, this is a record I keep about the The katina, the retreat, and the dana, it's a really simple record-keeping ledger.
Well, again, it depends what your attitude is. Of course, such a book could become an attachment, especially if you reach a point in your practice where you kind of give up the practice and you're just clinging to the memories that you can get from this book, but no longer practicing. You become, lazy or indulgent, say, in your life, turned away from the Dhamma, but you're just clinging to the book and the memories stored in the book as this is my merit and it's good enough. Of course, that wouldn't be a good thing. You want to keep practicing. But if you have the right attitude, you understand these actions I've done in the past, the merit I've made, they were good. And they are something to be mindful and aware of, and they can be uplifting when I remember, but it's not the end of the story. I have to keep practicing. And by reading in the past, that gives you, maybe helps to energize you and inspire you to keep doing more, keep practicing more. It's especially helpful to have such a diary or a book in your old age when you maybe can do less and your memory's a bit fuzzy. Then it's very nice to read about past meritorious experiences. That can be helpful, and that's not a bad thing. And incidentally, we've been talking about Ajahn Chah tonight, because it's coming up to his birthday. When Ajahn Chah went to the UK to teach the Dhamma, he kept a journal. He wrote about his experiences there, where he taught, who he taught, what kind of events happened. Some of the things he wrote about were very kind of ordinary, mundane. Others were quite insightful. And so, even a great arahant like Ajahn Chah still writes a journal. So it can be a very useful thing. When visiting teachers come to our monastery, we encourage them to write some comment. Excuse me. We encourage them to write comments in a journal for us to read. So it's also nice for others to read sometimes what a teacher has written about their time in a place, their reflections on the people, what the events that happened, and so on. So I think overall, it's not a bad thing to write a journal or a diary, but just be aware it's not it shouldn't replace continued practice. It should be a support for the practice, not a cause for you just to give up practicing and attach to the journal as good enough.
Sadhu Lumpur. Just to also let people know that Lumpur doesn't have a computer in front of him. He just has a camera. So he cannot read the messages that you're typing on the chat box. So if you're typing your question on the chat box and it's about your practice, my kind request is for you to ask the question directly so that Lumpur can understand your practice a bit better and help you in your process. Okay. Okay. Let me try to ask a series of questions here. Bante, this is from Tiara. Bante, when a dog gets put down for its sickness, does it mean the dog needs to repeat its karma in its next life because it did not finish the suffering? Or does it mean the dog did something good in its past life to end the suffering quicker by getting put down? And is it bad to agree with the vets when they say to put down the animal? Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Well, there's different factors here, and every case will be slightly different, so it's hard to generalize. But the first teaching or the first precept we practice in Buddhism is I undertake to refrain from killing. And that covers all situations. So the Buddha didn't promote euthanasia. So generally speaking, I would encourage you not to euthanize animals that are sick, injured, even though that is now the policy of most vets, most governments, most societies. I mean, it really goes back to don't take on a pet in the first place if you're going to have this doubt about whether I should euthanize it or not. there's a whole series of decisions that have led up to the point where you may have a sick pet, and then you're deciding whether to euthanize it or not. But as I've said many times, living in Thailand, we used to get stray dogs come into the monastery, and we wouldn't send them away to be euthanized. We would care for them when they were sick, and they'd be pretty miserable. They'd be flea-ridden sometimes, so you try and get rid of the fleas. They'd sometimes have pussy wounds, and you try and help them. And they often had a lot of physical ailments. But my impression was that dogs preferred to die with a bit of pain, but with a loving environment, monks caring for them, feeding them right to the very last day of their life. And I've done that. My impression was they preferred that than, say, being carted off to the vet and injected or whatever. You know, it's hard to generalize here, but generally speaking, you know, I would care for an animal just as a human. We don't euthanize humans, generally speaking. You know, you care for them till the end. And caring doesn't mean giving them every kind of treatment and every kind of remedy always. You might reach a point where you decide there's no more care needed in terms of medication and surgery. So then you might decide, just like you do with a human, to say, well, we're not going to take any more treatment. We're just going to care for our grandmother, grandfather, or our pet. And they may still have pain, and you have to accept that, but they're surrounded by loving people in a loving environment, and they die a natural death, and you're accepting that in your heart. And why do we euthanize pets? Well, partly it's because we can't stand the pain of seeing them suffer. And you know, it's karma, isn't it? You're euthanizing a pet. Maybe next life you'll be in a situation where you're have relatives who are wondering, should I turn the machine off? Should I euthanize granny or granddad? You know, it may come back on you in one way or another. So I would encourage loving care till the end, and just make wise decisions on how much treatment to take and what kind of treatment, because some treatments seem to prolong agony. You know, you keep someone alive or a dog alive without much quality of life. You know? So we have to make wise decisions in this, when to stop treatment or continue treatment. There's many issues involved, but Buddhism encourages loving care to the end, not euthanasia.
Okay, let me read out the questions since they've been typed down for you, Lumpur. The first question would be, Bhante, what are some effective ways one can let go and purify unwholesome mental mind objects? Many times, I'm unable to see the attachment as attachment. Thus, I cannot resolve that. For negative feelings, I can recite the sutta, but for mental objects and perceptions, it is challenging for me. Hope you can advise.
Well, number one, be patient with your own state of mind. Number two, bring up mindfulness. So practice mindfulness meditation regularly, whether it's the breath or recollection of the Buddha or any other meditation technique. In the end, you can go to that meditation object, stick your mind with that object. So attached to the object, it's a form of attachment, but you're using attachment in a skillful way. You attach your mind to your meditation object to the point where the other attachments drop away. So say you're angry, you go to the breath until you stop thinking those angry thoughts, or you do your walking meditation until those angry thoughts stop. And they will, if you keep putting mindfulness on an object, then any other object naturally will fade from your consciousness. So whether it's greed, jealousy, confusion, worry, fear, anger, everything can be let go of by developing firm mindfulness states of samadhi. But having said that, we also can use some wisdom. Sometimes wisdom is a shortcut. So, you know, remind yourself of the suffering of this mental state you're stuck in, whether it's some form of greed, some form of fear, worry, anger. Contemplate it. Sometimes that's a quick way to diminish its power over the mind and quickly let it go. So wisdom helps. But number one, in the end, go back to mindfulness. And this is what monks do. They're angry with somebody, they go off and they sit or they walk meditation until they've overcome the anger. Or they're afraid, they sit and they walk until they've established mindfulness, and then that fear disappears. In the end, that's the best way to do it.
Sadhanampa. May I please now invite Ying Ching, please?
Yes, and thank you, Long Po. And I have a question is, I have heard the Buddha say Dhamma friend is very important to help us to stay in the right path. But now I live alone, and the pandemic is quite worse in my country. So I don't know how to find the Dhamma friend and help each other, can do group meditation or share Dhamma or share Sutta. And want to ask your suggestions. Thank you, Long Po.
Well, I sympathize with your question. Many people are having this problem with the pandemic. A lot of people are housebound and limited in getting out to other places, meeting people. But we have, as compensation, we have this. We have video conferencing and video teaching. So that's one very useful way you can find Dhamma friends, by joining events like this, Zoom talks, chance to ask questions from teachers. You know, there's never been a time in the history of Buddhism where communication has been so easy. You know, you can come onto a Zoom talk like this, ask a question, get an answer, and it may not solve all your problems, but it helps. When I was a young monk and we wanted to ask a question, we had to walk for hours to go to the monastery where the teacher lived. You know, you didn't even have a car. We didn't have Zoom, telephone, computer, or anything. In the time of the Buddha, it was even worse. And the Buddha himself would walk, you know, all day or many days to go and teach one person the Dhamma. So I hope you can appreciate the means and ways we have at the moment to access Dhamma and to meet with Dhamma friends. And as you say, having good Dhamma friends are important, especially ones who understand the way of practice, especially with meditation, because it's a more refined, subtle practice. So online teachings are very helpful. When you do get the chance, when travel is possible, we'll travel where you can to meet with teachers in person. But also you have to find the Dhamma friend on the inside as well. You know, there's the external Dhamma friends, which are vital to the practice, but then also internally, you have to start mixing with the Dhamma in your heart. So the wholesome qualities, the mindfulness, the kindness, the wisdom, all the things we've been talking about and that you can study, bringing those qualities up on the inside is like mixing with your Dhamma friend on the inside. So every day you can ask yourself, today, who am I mixing with in my mind? You know, am I thinking a lot of worried thoughts, angry thoughts? You know, they're not your Dhamma friends. So they're the ones you need to let go of. You know, you don't have to spend time with them. Bring up the thought of kindness, generosity, mindfulness, reflect on the Dhamma. Those are like your internal Dhamma friends, the good friends. So spend more time with that way of thinking. So you just make the best of the situation you're in. You know, we're all suffering the same problems with the pandemic. So, you know, we can all sympathize with each other, but you make the best of your situation to practice the Dhamma in the best way you can, wherever you are, with whatever teachings you've got. So at least tonight you have Dhamma friends, you're not alone. We encourage you to keep practicing. We support you. We wish you well.
Thank you, Long Po.
Sadhanampa. So there's a final question. Dear Ajahn, if one practice present-mindedness, I think what this person means is a present moment awareness, so that one attains the pure awareness. Okay, the person experiences joy, peace, and compassion. Can this person be said to be liberated?
Well, there's many levels of liberation. So certainly in that moment, they're liberated from the unwholesome dhammas, the opposites of what they're developing. If they have mindfulness, compassion, awareness, those are very positive, wholesome qualities. So in that moment, they're liberated from delusion, from anger, from greed and attachment. It depends on what level their practice is at, how mature their mind is, how mature their spiritual faculties are, because those moments of liberation may not last. They may fade and then you get attachment again. And I think most people understand this dynamic. One moment your mind is peaceful, you see the Dhamma, you understand the Dhamma of letting go and it's all good. And then suddenly, not long after that, conditions change and suddenly you're back with your old way of thinking. You're angry, you're deluded, you're fed up, you're craving something that you haven't got, and we get this back and forth experience. Of course, one who mind has matured in the practice to a certain level, they're never going to go back. So then they don't go back to states of anger and greed and so on. So the practice of liberation is an ongoing practice, and the mind is gradually being liberated more and more and more. Hopefully you reach the point where there's no falling back. It's just permanently liberated. That's nibbana, isn't it? The mind is no longer creating suffering, no longer creating attachment out of experience. It knows experience, but it's not attached. But on the way to that, we have to have the ups and downs, the good times, the bad times, but we keep practicing, keep bringing up that present moment awareness, keep letting go of the attachment, and you're going in the right direction.
Sadhu Lampa. So before we let you go, perhaps may I please invite Lampa to share a little bit about tomorrow's proceedings, just to share with friends who've joined us late today and they didn't hear about the earlier call for tomorrow's retreat. Thank you.
Okay, so you may have seen the literature, but we have a one-day retreat tomorrow, starting at 8 a.m. Melbourne time. I think that's 6 a.m. Singapore time, going through till 6 p.m. Melbourne time or 4 p.m. Singapore time. So it's in honor and memory of Ajahn Chah, our teacher, a day dedicated to practice. So we'll be beginning with some morning chanting, taking the 8 precepts, meditation with meditation instruction, and going through the day like that with sitting, walking meditation, Q&A session through till the end. So if you're free, say in Australia, it's a public holiday, so many people are free. That's great if you can join and practice together. Like the questioner was saying, sometimes you feel lonely in the practice, especially during lockdown. Well, this is one way you can get a bit of group energy and support by at least seeing on the screen other people practicing, hearing the chanting, hearing the talks. Can help uplift you, give you a bit of warmth in your practice.
And just to add to Lampa, towards the end of the session tomorrow, there will be a seeking of forgiveness ceremony. And how can one prepare the requisites at home and to join in? Could you please elaborate on that?
So it's our usual practice at the end of a retreat, whether it's one day or many days, we do an asking forgiveness ceremony from the Sangha, the teachers, and we recite in Pali. You can find that in the chanting book. It's a recitation. It's just a skillful way to end the time together in case we've thought or said or done anything that hurt somebody else's feelings or was offensive or wrong, or maybe you didn't, and probably you didn't do any of that, but we do it just as a good practice, a good habit when parting at the end of a retreat. We've been together, we're about to separate. So you separate on good terms, you ask forgiveness, you give forgiveness, and that's mutual. We forgive you, you forgive us, everyone forgives each other. So you can leave, the air is clear, no regrets, and you can just focus on the merit, the good karma you've made during your retreat. So it's a very skillful practice, good habit to get into. Physically, normally you would sit with your hands in Anjali, you maybe hold flowers and then offer flowers to the teacher. Obviously, online you can't physically do that, but you can do it mentally, and wherever you are at home or wherever you're watching, you can do the chant with your hands in Anjali. If you have flowers, you just place the flowers in front of a Buddha statue or a picture or something. So it's a very skillful way to end the retreat.